Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for welcoming me and inviting me here. Yesterday, I was standing at the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and just meditating and looking at both sides, thinking to myself, I'm standing at the steps of where our founding fathers of the United States of America set in motion the values of how the United States of America and its Constitution respects freedom of religion. I've had many invitations this week to come and talk to. When I have received the invitation to come here today, it was God again calling me, and I answered. And I said, I want to be here today. I want to be here with you, who are standing tall and proud, and who are fighting for religious freedoms in America. I come from 3 generations of Americans. My father was born in Providence, Rhode Island. My mother was born in McKeesport, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I never thought, growing up, that we will have to fight for religious freedoms in America. It sounded like an oxymoron. We in America have to fight for religious freedom? Growing up in Brooklyn, New York, in the Crown Heights section, there were times I had to fight. I was 5 years old when I was holding a little charity box that my school gave out to the kids to try to collect. I was followed home, and I was mugged for that little charity box. 5 years old, I didn't understand. Why would someone want to throw me down and take away a few pennies and nickels that I collected? But just as I was thrown down then, I got right up. I went back to school the next day, and I asked for another charity box so I could continue. I had no idea that my life was being set in motion then, at 5 years old. That what's going to happen when I'm 57 years old. 30 days ago was a regular Saturday morning, finishing up 8 days of Passover. 8 days of celebrating our very first freedom. For 210 years, we were enslaved in Egypt. Moses secured our freedom in a most miraculous way, and we made our way to Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, a gift to the world, to teach the world about morals, ethics, and about creating the world to be a dwelling place for God. Freedom is what we celebrated for 8 days on Passover. The first 7 days, we celebrated the past, what happened in Egypt 3,300 years ago. The last day of Passover was dedicated to the future. It was about bringing the world back to a place where we're going to live side by side without hatred, without jealousy, without war. The wolf and the lamb will be together, as the prophet Isaiah writes. So I grew up in Crown Heights. My rabbi was Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson of blessed memory. He came to America in 1942. In 1950, he became the Grand Chabad Rabbi. And he realized that there is a nation that has just endured the worst that humanity has ever seen, the Holocaust, where we lost a third of our nation in the most brutal, gruesome way mankind can imagine than ever before. He found a nation that has been downtrodden, broken, and many have lost their faith. But they came to America, known as the Golden Medina, the nation of gold. They came to America after much struggle. Many have been turned away at first, but finally the gates opened up at Ellis Island. They came to America for freedom. Some came to be free from religion. The majority came to have freedom to practice religion. And the Rebbe felt it was his responsibility as a world leader to facilitate the future of Judaism in America. And the Rebbe himself, coming from Russia, fleeing on the last boat from Europe to America, made this commitment that he's going to secure religious freedom in America for the Jewish people and then for the world. And the Rebbe began building an army of soldiers, of rabbis, who would be dispatched throughout the world to conquer the world with love, with light, with teaching, and began the Chabad house movements. And we have Chabad houses spanning the globe. I have a son who's in Sydney, Australia. I have a brother in Madrid, Spain. I have another brother in Ann Arbor, Michigan, at the University of Michigan. We have spanning the globe right now, currently today. In 1984, I was given the opportunity to open up a Chabad center in San Diego, in northern San Diego, a new suburb. Then it was called Rancho Bernardo. Then we found a piece of property. It was a vacant piece of land in the city of Poway. My wife and I was 24 years old, she was 20 years old. We just got married. A week after our wedding, we moved into our small apartment, and we made a commitment that we're not going to move from here forever. This is a one-way trip. We're committed to preserve Judaism and freedom of religion right here in northern San Diego. People thought we were crazy. People thought that there was no chance that a traditional Jewish synagogue will open up in northern San Diego. This is California, otherwise known the land of the fruits and the nuts. Southern California was a cultural change for my wife and I. Very different than growing up in Brooklyn, New York. There was no kosher bagel shop nearby, or any kosher food. We had to schlep to Los Angeles just to get our bare necessities. But we were committed. We knew that we were created for a purpose. Our purpose is to make this world a better place and to be one of the Rebbe soldiers to make this happen. And we built our Chabad Center. Fast forward 33 years. We got married in 1986. Here we are 33 years later, Saturday morning 30 days ago. I wake up in the morning, a typical Saturday morning. Last day of Passover. We had plenty of matzah over the 8 days. We're getting ready for the holiday to finish and grab our first bagel. You can't eat that during Passover. A very festive mode. My youngest daughter, I got 5 boys and 1 girl. Our youngest daughter got married April 10, just 2 weeks before Passover. Our new son-in-law joined us for the whole including my grandchildren. As I'm turning, the shooter starts to shoot right at me. And he succeeded to injure my hands, but not my soul. I was able to gather the children, bring them to safety, not even realizing that I was shot. After the children were at safety, I ran back up, not knowing that the shooter has already left. But my mission was to stand tall and not allow this to take us down. And I ran back up. I could have been in the line of fire. But those footsteps back up into the sanctuary, I was imagining the worst sight. This shooter came armed with enough bullets to kill every single one of us. That was his intent. His intent was to violate our sanctuary, to strip away any freedom, any religious freedom we ever had, to bring the darkness of death and evil into our home. I will not let that happen. I will stand tall, and I will do whatever we need to do to stand up to this type of darkness. But that darkness lasted a very short few seconds. Immediately, miracles upon miracles upon miracles started to unfold right in front of our own eyes. The miracle that I survived, I lost my finger, but I survived. The miracle that none of the kids got seriously injured. He was aiming at the children that was right behind him. A miracle that no one else in the congregation has died. A miracle that he didn't know how to reload his gun. That our Army veteran took that pause of a moment and charged at him. The miracle that when my congregation was huddled outside, I had the wherewith and the presence of mind to stand up on a chair and to give a sermon to them standing outside huddled with a sight of fear and fright that I've never seen in my life, and tell them, in every generation that have risen up against us, but God has always spared us. This will not take us down. This will not defeat us. But we're going to get stronger from this. And I had them all shout out loud the words, Am Yisroel Chai, the nation of Israel lives. Standing here today, listening to my introductions, it is so heartwarming to feel from everyone here as we are one family. It's not that I'm Jewish and you're Hindu, you're Catholic, you're Christian. We are here fighting for freedom of all religions. And if you learn from history, if we can learn from history, any nation that has stood up against the Jewish nation has truly fallen. Look where Egypt is now. Look where the Greek government is now. Look where the Romans are now. Look where the Babylonians are. Look what happened to Germany. Look what happened to Russia. History teaches us, and we ought to learn from history. And here we are in America, just 74 years away from the days of the Holocaust. My students are asking me, Rabbi, is history repeating itself? What we saw on Saturday morning in our sanctuary just 30 days ago was a page out of a pogrom, was a page out of the Holocaust. This isn't supposed to happen right here in America. My 4.5-year-old granddaughter has to see me screaming, shouting, run for shelter, and sees a bloody hand and says, Grandpa, what's happening?
And the fear on her face is the same picture you take out of the book of the Holocaust. This is wrong at every single level. Not in 2019 here in the United States of America. So we need to be able to get whatever resources we have to begin once again anew, realizing that there is a fundamental flaw. Something has gone wrong, and we need to fix this. We need to bring back religious freedom the way our founding fathers had it. In 1983-84, when President Ronald Reagan was shot, I was just starting out my career. I was a young man. Well, those older than myself would remember when you heard the news when John F. Kennedy was shot. Those are one of those moments that freezes in your mind. I remember that. And we all turned to the Rabbi Schneerson, for guidance. This is 1984. And the Rebbe was very close with our president, Dr. Ronald Reagan. They shared a lot of views. They were the same age. And they were both world leaders. And they came up with the idea, recognizing that children in America are growing up in homes where the concept of recognizing that there's a higher being is non-existent. Recognizing that there's accountability is no longer existing. Recognizing that there's accountability for what you do in life is non-existent. Or recognizing why are you created. And they came up with the idea, prayer was taken out of the schools in the 50s. But how about a moment of silence? How about a moment of reflection? How about if we bring back to our public school system the concept that the children should start out the day thinking, gosh, why am I here in this world? Why was I born? What's my mission? And recognizing that everyone has a mission in this world. Everyone is created for a purpose. Because the day you were born, God said, the world can no longer exist without you. That's why you were born. And let children come home and tell the parents what they thought about during that moment of silence. Let the parents respond. Have you made a good resolution? Have you considered what today is going to be different than yesterday? Have you considered forgiving your friend? And let a dialogue begin about morals and ethics and more meaning to life than just me and the I and the physicality materialism that God has blessed our generation with. And this is perhaps the takeaway from what we can learn from what happened to myself and our congregation, is recognizing that there is darkness out there, but also recognizing the darkness could last just a brief moment if there's an overwhelming amount of light. If we can literally change the paradigm of thinking and create 1 billion good deeds out there. Let's create a movement that will start getting people to think that they are agents of God to make this world a better place. And start doing good deeds. Not just talking about it, but actually doing it. And recognizing that everything in life happens for a reason and a purpose. The fact that you and I are existing in the year 2019 means that each one of us have a responsibility and have the ability to make a change, make a difference. And religious freedom is something that we need to begin fighting for. As sadly as it sounds, it was very odd for me when I was first introduced and saying, religious freedom, really? We have to fight for that now? And the answer is, yes, we need to fight for it. And we need to fight for it with whatever means we have, but beginning with the gift that God has given us to share, to impart with others, random acts of kindness, to talk to our legislation, to institute a moment of silence, to reach out to whoever we can from all across the world, all religions, and realize we're all children of God. We're all created in the image of God. And we need to continue walk proudly in the streets of America, as I wrote about, standing tall with our kippah. I know when I came to Rancho Bernardo, I was just 24 years old, and I was walking in the street. I knew I was a walking billboard. I also knew I was a walking target. It didn't deter me. I was proud. And I've always thought to myself, if I'm going to go down in history because I walked around in the streets of America as a proud American Jew, if that's the way someone wants to take me out, so be it. But I stood tall, and I stood tall as a proud American and as a proud Jew. And this is what I felt is what the Religious Freedom Institute is all about. You are protecting our freedoms. You are fighting for our freedoms. And this new initiative that's going to help us understand more of it. But we're not just going to leave it by that, but we're going to actually create an action that's going to make that happen. And this is a concept, a thought to realize that nothing in life happens for nothing. There are no coincidences, but it's called divine providence. Some people have told me, Rabbi, I'm sorry that you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm so sorry for you. I say, excuse me. I was in the exact place where I needed to be, and in the exact time that I needed to be. God called me, and I answered the phone. And I said, yes, I am there to stand up for you. When the bullets came flying across and through me, it was a matter of seconds. To feel the veracity, the power of death flying right by you, millimeters away, and surviving that. You know that God accepted your answer. My son-in-law, just married 2 weeks, was standing on the podium reading from the Torah when the last 2 gunshots rang through into the sanctuary. The bullet grazed over his head enough to tear off the material of his kippah. And he did not get hurt. He has that kippah. This was a helmet that literally protected his head. It was thin material, but thick as the greatest armor, because he stood there reading from the Torah, reading from existential words of spirituality, of soul, of God, of meaning, of purpose. This is what Judaism is about. This is what Christianity is about. This is what Muslim is about. This is what Hinduism is about. This is what life is about. God created us all where we need to be, how we need to be. But we must remember, we are all children of God, and God loves life. God wants us to preserve life. God wants us to support life, and to be life, and to do life. And that's one of the lines that just came out of me during the article when I was interviewed with the New York Times. I said, it's not enough just to be Jewish. You got to do Jewish. And the same thing with your prospective religions. Don't just be it by name, but actually do it, live it, and be proud of it. And really become a light unto your family, unto your neighbors, unto your nations. When I was 17 years old, I was studying in France in a school, yeshiva, parochial school, learning Judaism. I went there because the remnants of those who fled Europe stopped off in this little village north of Paris called Brunois. And there were elderly teachers who didn't have the energy, the strength to move on to America or Israel, so they just settled there. And it was kind of going back in time. And I wanted to get a taste of what was life in Europe. What was it like to learn from these great teachers who never went to Israel, to America, but stayed there. So I spent 3 years there. And when I was there, 17 years old, I penned a letter to Rabbi Schneerson, my Rabbi, and I asked him for some help in direction in my studies and how I could concentrate on my studies. And the Rebbe would receive letters from presidents, from governors, from senators, congressmen, with heads of states from all over the world. The amount of mail that the Rebbe received was just insurmountable to go through every single day. The Rebbe worked for 45 years, never took a vacation, worked in one office every day the same amount of time. At times he would work through the night answering the letters or meeting people. One day, the head of my school calls me in to his office and shows me a letter, an airmail letter. For those of you from my generation may remember the blue trifold apparently on those airmail letters. And I opened it up, and I was just so astounded that the Rebbe, the world leader, Rabbi Schneerson, would write me a letter. I was 17 years old. And I read the letter, and he addresses my name. He says, "Dear Yisroel," which was my Hebrew name. And he writes to me that it's important to understand when you're studying, your mind is a chest that you can fill it up with darkness or light. It's what your eye reads. It's what you study. How are you going to fill up your mind? If you fill up your mind with holy words, you will have a holy mind. And then he pens a line which I never knew, that 40 years later, that's going to be a line that I'm going to be living with. And the line was, if a little bit of light pushes away a lot of darkness, how much more a lot of light. That final words in the letter to me was words that I lived with for the rest of my life. The moment I survived the shooting, that became my tagline. The Rebbe had the foresight to write that to me. I had the insight to read it and to retain it and to live by it. We need to push away the darkness, and we can. Last Wednesday night, we concluded the writing of the Torah in memory of Lori. The last letters of the Torah, the last letter is a L for the name of Lori. The last word is Israel, which is my name. We lifted up that Torah, a brand new scroll that was brought to our congregation, and we began dancing. Just 30 days after the shooting, we began dancing. This is how we respond to tragedy. We mourn, we grieve, and then we dance right away. We don't get stuck or consumed by the darkness, by the tragedy event, but rather we rise up and we realize that we have a future to form, and we're going to be living examples for our children. And that can only be done with joy, with celebrating life, and celebrating the great future. This is what I hope that I can impart with you today. You and I haven't met before. This is our first time we're meeting. My Rebbe had a beautiful saying that when two people meet, something good has to happen for the third person. Every Sunday, for the last 8 years of his life, in the Eastern Parkway, he used to stand and give out dollar bills. People would visit with him. He would give them $1 and say, "Do something good with this." And they would ask him questions, he would answer. Two people meet, something good has happened for a third person. My brother and I are embarking on launching 1 billion good deeds to capture the world. This is an initiative to tilt the scale in the world of creating as many good deeds as possible. I may have lost my finger in the hands of a terrorist, but this finger I have given to every single one of you to be able to point up to God and say, "God, I'm going to get stronger from this. God, I'm going to fight for freedom of religion right here in the United States of America. God, I'm going to do whatever I can so we can leave this world to our children who would stand tall and proud with all that our founding fathers have said, with all that we have been through here in the United States of America. It's not too late, because better times are yet to come. Together, as a unified nation, we will prevail, and we will not be defeated, but rather we're going to get stronger and stronger, and the more light we create, the more darkness will be dispelled, and you and I, will see greater and better times. Amen. Thank you.